He came to the park for peace. An elderly man, walking the same path he had for years, carrying nothing more than a quiet dignity and a lifetime of memories. But that day, peace was stolen from him. A uniform approached, sharp words, cold eyes, and a demand that made no sense. No crime, no reason, just the color of his skin. What happened in those next few moments didn't just test his spirit. It revealed something deeper about who we are, and the power of those who refuse to look away. The question is, how would you have reacted if you were there? The morning had started like any other. The sun rose slowly over the city, painting the park in warm golden light. For Mr. Harris, a 72-year-old retired teacher, the park had become his sanctuary. Every day, he walked the same worn path, greeting joggers with a nod, smiling, at children who played on the swings, and sitting for a while on his favorite bench near the pond. It wasn't just a routine, it was his peace, a reminder that even after decades of hard work and struggle, life still had quiet beauty to offer. To the people who frequented the park, Mr. Harris was no stranger. They knew his gentle demeanor, his soft laugh, and the way he always fed the birds from a small paper bag. He asked for nothing. He bothered no one. But that day, something was different. A patrol car crept along the edge of the park. The officer inside seemed restless, scanning the benches and pathways as if searching for trouble. Mr. Harris barely noticed. He had seen officers pass before, but this one stopped. The car door opened. Boots crunched against gravel. The officer's gaze locked on him, not on the teens loitering near the basketball court, not on the dog off its leash, but on the old man simply sitting and feeding the bayou ducks. Mr. Harris didn't know it yet, but his quiet morning walk was about to turn into a public spectacle, one that would test his patience, his dignity, and the courage of those around him. The officer's shadow fell across the bench before Mr. Harris even looked up. His hands, frail yet steady, still tossed crumbs toward the pond. Slowly, he lifted his gaze. The officer stood rigid, hands on his belt, eyes sharp with suspicion. "You can't sit here," the officer barked, his tone more command than conversation. Confused, Mr. Harris blinked. "Sir, I've sat on this bench for years, just feeding the birds." His voice carried the calm wisdom of age, not defiance. But calm wasn't what the officer wanted. He stepped closer, towering over him. "I said, move along. People have complained." Mr. Harris glanced around. The joggers hadn't stopped. Children still played. Nobody seemed bothered by his presence. The only person who seemed disturbed was the one wearing the badge. His chest tightened. He knew this feeling too well. A lifetime of being judged before being known, of having to prove his innocence without cause. At 72, he thought, maybe those days were behind him. But here it was, again, in broad daylight, in a place where he had found comfort. The officer's tone grew louder, drawing attention. A mother paused mid-push on the swing, watching. A group of teens filming. TikToks shifted their gaze. A man walking his dog stopped a few feet away. Whispers started. Phones came out. Mr. Harris tried again, his voice steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "I'm not bothering anyone. I just want to sit here. Why are you asking me to leave?" The officer's jaw clenched. "Don't question me. Get up. Now." His hand rested on his holster, not drawing but reminding everyone of its presence. The crowd grew. Some shook their heads, others whispered under their breath. A woman pulled out her phone and began recording, the red light blinking as it captured every second. For Mr. Harris, the humiliation stung more than the threat. He could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on him, people witnessing yet frozen, unsure whether to intervene. His dignity, carefully preserved through years of struggle, now dangled in the balance of a stranger's prejudice. The officer leaned closer, voice low but venomous. "You people always think you own the place. Not today." The words cut deeper than the command. They weren't about rules or order. They were about skin, about history, about a system that too often saw men like him as problems, not people. The murmurs grew louder. Someone shouted, "Leave him alone!" Another voice echoed, "He's not doing anything!" The tension in the air thickened, every second dragging heavier than the last. And then, another figure stepped forward from the crowd. A man in his 30s, tall and confident, stepped between the officer and Mr. Harris. His voice was firm, steady, but carried a weight of righteous anger. "Enough," he said. "He's done nothing wrong. We're all watching, and you're not going to get away with this." The officer stiffened, his hand pressing harder on his belt. His eyes darted to the growing crowd. More phones raised now, more voices murmuring in disapproval. What had begun as a one-sided confrontation was becoming something bigger, something public. Mr. Harris sat frozen, his breath shallow, his heart pounding with memories of another era. Protests, marches, voices demanding equality. He had taught history to hundreds of students, warning them that the fight was far from over. And now, here it was, unfolding around him, as if history itself refused to stay in the past. The officer barked again, louder, angrier. "Back off, all of you! This is police business!" But the crowd didn't move away. In fact, they pressed closer. A woman shouted, "He's innocent!" A teenager yelled, "We're live streaming this!" The air buzzed with defiance, the balance of power shifting with every new voice. The officer's face reddened. His authority, once unchallenged, was unraveling before his eyes. He turned back to Mr. Harris, perhaps still hoping to force obedience. But the old man was no longer alone. He was shielded by dozens of witnesses, their cameras, their outrage. And then, the moment that changed everything. The officer reached for Mr. Harris's arm. A sharp motion meant to yank him from the bench. Gasps erupted. But before his grip could tighten, several people surged forward, placing themselves between him and the elderly man. "Touch him, and you'll regret it," someone warned, their phone inches from the officer's face. The officer froze. His authority had cracked. For the first time, it was clear. This wasn't going to end the way he had expected. The crowd had chosen a side, and it wasn't his. The officer's hand hovered in the air, but he didn't move. The wall of witnesses stood firm, their voices rising, their cameras locked on him. For a moment, the silence between shouts was deafening. A silence filled with the weight of choice. Finally, the officer stepped back. His jaw tightened, his face burning with frustration. But he knew. He couldn't fight the crowd, the lenses, the undeniable truth already streaming across the internet. Without another word, he turned, muttering something under his breath as he walked briskly back to his car. The patrol engine roared, and just like that, he was gone. The crowd erupted in relief, some clapping, others consoling the trembling man still seated on the bench. Mr. Harris's eyes glistened, not from fear anymore, but from the bittersweet ache of knowing he hadn't stood alone. Strangers had stepped forward. Strangers had chosen to care. One young woman placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You don't deserve that, sir. None of us do." He nodded, words caught in his throat. In that moment, he saw not just bystanders, but a new generation, refusing to stay silent. As the crowd dispersed, Mr. Harris remained for a while, gazing at the rippling water. His sanctuary had been shaken, but it hadn't been stolen. And though the encounter left scars, it also left a powerful reminder that silence protects no one, and unity is stronger than fear. Because what happened in that park wasn't just one man's story. It was a reflection of countless others. Stories of dignity challenged, humanity questioned, and justice delayed. Stories that too often fade away unless people choose to remember. So the question remains, when you see injustice in front of you, will you look away or will you stand? If this story moved you, remember, it's not just fiction. Incidents like this happen every day, in parks, in neighborhoods, in places that should feel safe. Racism isn't always hidden. It can be loud, public, and humiliating. But what matters most is how people choose to respond. That day, strangers stood up. They made sure an old man's dignity wasn't stolen. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Silence protects no one. But courage, even from just one person, can change everything. So I'll leave you with this. If you were there in that park, what would you have done? If you believe stories like this need to be told, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because the more we talk about it, the harder it becomes for the world to ignore.